After a while of traveling, the car they were traveling in finally arrived at their destination. After getting out of the car, Yona then amazed at the scenery in front of her, seeing the towering mountains and standing so majestically in front of her. Yona thought, so that's the Wind Mountain, huh? As for Nayun, after getting out of the car, she walked around casually while humming a song. She happily asked, "It feels like we are having a picnic, you agree, right?" Nayun seems very excited about this tour. Hajin agreed, he also felt like it. Seeing his reaction, Nayun then mocked him, "What kind of reaction is that? Do you have Shin Jonghak's disease?" Hajin was then surprised to hear that. He then immediately denied it. Nayun laughed at that, while Shin Jonghak himself could only feel confused at what the two of them were talking about. The guide then said to them, "There is a house on the mountain waiting for you. The master that Mr. Jinsung invited seems to be late and will arrive at night." Nayun was excited to hear that a master was coming. She then immediately turned to Shin Jonghak and asked him, "Who is it?" But Jonghak didn't just answer her question and acted mysterious. "You will be surprised when you see him later." After all the participants in this tour got out of the car and gathered, Jonghak then said that they had to reach the top no later than 3 in the afternoon. So he then invited them to hurry up. Hearing that, they then both walked in and started climbing the mountain. On their way up the mountain, Nayun looked very excited and curiously looked around her. As for Yona and Jonghak, they were seen walking together and talking. After walking for who knows how long, they were already feeling a little tired at this time. They wondered, "How long have we been walking?" They also asked Jonghak, "Is it really this long?" Jonghak was also confused about it. He thought they might have taken the wrong path. With a suspicious face, Yona said that she felt something was strange. They had been climbing this mountain for quite a while, but why did the ground remain flat? The atmosphere suddenly fell silent when they heard that. They seemed to have the same confusion. As Suho looked around, he then noticed something strange. He then called out to them and asked if anyone had seen Hajin. They were then surprised to hear his question. Nayun then said that Hajin had been following them from behind, but when she looked behind her, she didn't see anyone. Feeling upset, she then immediately told Hajin to stop playing around and come out, but no one responded to her call, only silence she got. Yona immediately felt anxious seeing that. He was just behind them a moment ago though. Realizing the seriousness of the problem, Nayun wondered, is he really gone? Seeing her anxious expression, Jonghak immediately told her to calm down. He didn't think this was a serious problem. He felt Hajin was a slow idiot, so maybe he just couldn't catch up properly. Plus this mountain was filled with different precious herbs, so maybe his attention was distracted by that. He then invited them to look for him. He might be lost now, but, right at that moment, they were then shocked when the place they were on suddenly shook violently. They were confused. Was this an earthquake? They were really shocked by this sudden event, but, when Yona looked up and saw the sky, she was then stunned. Her mind froze for a moment seeing the sun above that seemed to be devoured by something, but she couldn't seem to care too much about it now, because the intensity of the earthquake that hit the place they were in continued to increase over time until it knocked down the trees around them. Seeing that, Suho then immediately told them to be careful. After some time passed, the earthquake finally stopped, but they once again faced something confusing. They were now in a place filled with very tall grass. Seeing the shaking produced by the earthquake disappear, Yonghan somewhat bitterly said, "It seems like the earthquake has stopped." Looking at the very tall grass that surrounded them, Yona wondered, did nature magic do this? The weeds grew shoulder high. She was confused by that. Wind Mountain does have a high concentration of mana, but, before Yona could finish her words, she was then surprised when she heard Suho's exclamation, with a wary expression. He and Jonghak were seen looking in a direction at this time. In that direction, a light was seen slowly approaching towards them. Seeing that, they realized that it was a flashlight and someone was walking towards them. After a while passed, the light got closer until it illuminated them. Seeing Suho and others in front of him, he was then surprised and relieved. He had thought that they were some mountain beasts, but it turned out to be a group of teenagers. While smiling kindly, he then asked, "What are you doing here?" The person turned out to be just an ordinary middle-aged man. The middle-aged man then once again asked them, "Are you lost? This place is a dangerous zone. Mana explosion can happen at any time." They were then confused at the word. Yona then hesitantly asked, "Do you mean mana explosion like we read in the textbook?" Mana explosion is a phenomenon where dense and unstable mana explodes. this event often occurs during the 3 years after the outcall. When mana on Earth is still unstable, their confusion is natural, because they have never heard a mana explosion appearing over the past time. After experiencing various strange events for some time, Soho realized that there were many things they didn't know. For now, he thought they should follow that person if they wanted to get out of here. He was also sure that they would be able to meet Hajin there, but, just as they came out of the forest, they were then treated to the sight of a destroyed city. Seeing the city that was devastated and looked like a former war area, Soho confusedly asked, "Where is this?" Seeing his confusion, the middle-aged man then answered, "This is the only safe place around here. Don't tell me that you don't even know about Gwangmyeong City Hall." Hearing that name, Nayeon became even more confused. "Isn't that the place we passed before? But this place is just ruins." Hearing that, Soho then realized something. With suspicion mounting in his heart, he then immediately asked the middle-aged man, "What is the date now?" But the middle-aged man said that he didn't know. They didn't have the energy to do something like remembering dates. Hearing that, Soho then anxiously asked him to recall. A rough estimate was enough. Hearing that, the middle-aged man then tried to recall. He then answered, "I think it's 1972, They were then shocked to hear his answer. The answer given by the middle-aged man was like the final puzzle that connected the puzzles that Soho had found before. Now everything made sense. The terrain suddenly looked flat, as well as situations that sounded strange in their era such as mana explosion. He then realized that they were now in the Gwangmyeong city in 1972, but what confused him was, how could this happen? While Soho was thinking hard about it, Nayeon was then surprised when a man suddenly pulled his hand. The man also carried a dagger in his other hand. He told her that it was dangerous if she was still outside at this hour. Nayeon was then confused and surprised by his actions. She then immediately told him to let her go. Jong-hak, who saw the scene, then immediately ran over, and hit the man right in his face. With an angry face, Jong-hak then threatened the man to release Nayeon immediately. The middle-aged man didn't seem surprised when he saw the scene. He told them not to be so rude. He then snapped his fingers and said that they were not bad people. Right after that, several armed men then appeared, surrounding them from all sides. Seeing that, Soho then immediately became alert. He wondered, was this a trap? But, as he was getting ready to face them, he then discovered a surprising fact. He couldn't use his mana at this time. Not only him, Yonghan was also surprised when he realized that he couldn't use his mana. He was really confused by that. With a cruel grin on his face, the middle-aged man then said, "You shouldn't just follow me," and when Yona looked around, she was then surprised. They were surrounded from all sides by a bunch of armed men. Soho then angrily looked at the middle-aged man, and asked, "Why are you doing this?" The middle-aged man smiled at that. He then casually replied, "I don't know, maybe because you could be a threat to us." But, before the middle-aged man and his group could launch their action, the sound of gunshots suddenly sounded and shot towards the middle-aged man. They immediately panicked at that. A guess then came to their minds, and when they looked towards the source of the shots, they then saw a person with a gun in his hand who looked like a biker. The person's head was covered by a helmet with a sport bike in front of him. They immediately panicked at the sight of this person. They recognized him. They called him the monster that eats humans. The middle-aged man swore. He then immediately told his group not to just stand there and told them to immediately go inside. He said that they had to immediately report it to the Asura. But, it seems like the person won't let them go just like that. Seeing them fleeing in panic, he then mercilessly shot them one by one. After a few moments passed, all they could see was the corpses of these people lying on the street while covered in blood. With a feeling of surprise, Soho then looked at the person. He wondered, who exactly was that person? Seeing the person who just stood still while looking at them with his helmet still covering his face, Jong-hak then irritably rushed to the person. He irritably said, "If you don't want to show who you are, I will make you do it." They were then surprised at his careless actions. Not only them, the person also seemed to be surprised at his actions. He then frantically told him to stop, but, it seemed useless. His voice seemed to have been muffled by his helmet, which made Jong-hak unable to hear him. With his spear, Jong-hak then pried his helmet out of his head, which made his helmet fly and fall away from him. He then grimaced in pain while holding his chin. Jong-hak's actions seemed to have hurt him a little. He then helplessly said to Jong-hak, "At least give me a chance to talk before you attack me." But, Jong-hak looked surprised when he finally saw his face. The person then looked at him and said, "Long time no see, the person's face looks similar to Hajin but with a more mature appearance.